Right then, here we go, good swing, knock it on.
Oh, you lifted your head there, mate.
Is that what I did? Lifted my head? Yeah, I thought that was the case. Guys, in this video we're going to give you the 3 worst pieces of golf advice that you hear when you're out on the golf course. Let's take a look at this lesson. You've probably all heard that one, you lifted your head. It's the most common one that we hear when we see poor shots happening out on the golf course. Our partner says, oh, you lifted your head there, mate. That's why you topped it. That's why you thinned it. That's why you sliced it. It is the answer to every poor golf shot, it seems. And that probably isn't the case. When we hear it, it doesn't actually mean what we've done is the reason behind that top shot there, because when I lift my head, what it's actually talking about is people think that you actually look towards the target too early when you start to make your golf swing. So as you're here, you start to actually look to where you're going. And that's probably not the case if you're someone who's generally topping the golf ball or thinning it a lot. It's probably because you're not shifting your weight, and it's also probably because you're coming out of posture. So what we saw from that shot there as I came through, I intentionally lifted my hips as I came into the downswing to make sure that I stood up from the golf ball. So I've lost all the angles in my body. I also made sure that I put a little bit more weight going back into my trail leg as I came down into impact, just to make sure that my arc wasn't getting low enough at the right time and I got up over the top of the golf ball. But like we say, a lot of people would say that I lifted my head. That wasn't the case. If we are someone who is getting a lot of top shots, what we want to try and imagine is that as we're swinging, the level of my sternum, so my chest, isn't altering too much. So if we just come round here, what we would see is in the poor one where I top it, my chest stands up. I've still got my eyes focused on the ball, so I'm not technically lifting my head, but my chest moves up and I let my hips come towards the golf ball and I lose all my angles. I want to try and make some swings where my chest is feeling that that doesn't change level here, so it would stay down, because when we look at great players in the past, someone like a Henrik Stenson or an Eric Soneston, we can see that they're actually, and even David Duval, they're actually looking at target as they impact the golf ball. So they've lifted their head, but they've managed to keep their posture as they do it. So try and feel that we keep the chest down a little bit longer and the weight going into the front. And what we should get is a remedy for that poor shot where we lift our head, or don't lift our head. We actually get the chest down and get a really good strike here. And as we see there, crushed away, little divot, and that is how we fix the lifting your head problem. Let's go and look at advice number 2 on this worst golf advice. So before we get onto that second worst piece of golf advice, guys, I want you to click this subscribe button down below. You're going to do that and you're going to get better at golf with me. I want you to get better, and by hitting that subscribe button, you're getting free golf lessons. So do that, and let's go and find out what the second piece of worst golf advice is. Right, little 8 iron, 150. Here we go. Ball's in the good spot. Good strike, come on. Oh, your ball was too far forwards there, mate. That's probably one of the things that we see happening out on the golf course. A big divot like so, and someone says to you, your ball was too far forwards. What you want to try and do is move your ball back in your stance, because that's going to make sure when that club's coming down, instead of catching that ground first and the ball being here, now if you move that ball back to where you caught the ground, you'll get the ball first and you'll get a decent strike. That isn't the case. So many times I've had lessons walk into my bay and they said that they've been struggling with this exact shot where they're taking a big huge divot out, and I see something where they've got a mid iron, a 6, 7, 8 iron, and it is played at the back of the stance here. So we see that the handle of the golf club and the shaft is lent really forwards. There's lots of loft taken off the club there, so this 8 iron gets turned nearly into a 4 or a 3 iron because of how much lean there is going forwards. And the window of opportunity to actually get this strike becomes very, very small, because what happens when I put this ball back, I start to come down very steeply as I'm coming down here. So what I would actually try and do then, subconsciously knowing that, is almost move back here to make sure that I don't bury the club in anymore. So again, I would probably start getting divots back behind the golf ball. If I were to actually get it, I'd almost trap the golf ball in between the grass and the club and see that it would come out like a rocket. So my 8-iron that's actually meant to launch a bit higher would come out really low. I would see I probably wouldn't get the same carry distance, but it could potentially go shooting through the back of the green because it's come out really low. What we want to try and do when we've got these shots, instead of having the ball now placed back in my stance, the ball position was right at the start of that swing. What I didn't do is transfer my weight in my golf swing. Again, it's a little bit like the topped one, but what we need to do, if we're someone who is struggling actually taking the ball and making a good strike with their irons, a great drill that we can do is actually place the golf ball out in front of our lead foot here. And if I imagine just setting my club up to the middle now, for me to get to this golf ball, I've really got to shift forward. So it trains me to make my weight move forwards into the impact zone. Instead of moving back and getting the club burying in, having this drill makes me move forward. So we'd have a swing where we've had a few practice swings moving it into forwards, and if you want as well, you can even hit one off like this. If I just demonstrate, a little bit thin there, I didn't quite get it, but with that feeling now, if I then go into my normal ball position and take that feeling of actually transferring the weight forwards, I see that the ball's just in front of my centre there because I've got an 8-iron, and as I start my downswing, I'm going to feel the sternum move slightly in front of the ball and make sure that I get this really good strike. So I've not moved it back, I'm going to move my weight forwards in the downswing. And absolutely crushed that one there. Sounded totally different, felt totally different, and as we can see, a slight little divot there as opposed to the excavation site we had at the start there. So advice number 2, if you're someone who's struggling really getting a crisp strike with your golf ball, don't move it back in your stance. Make sure that you learn to move your weight correctly and see that you start striking it better. Let's go and take a look at that final piece of advice that we all need to be listening to. Okay, and the final piece of advice that I want to give you guys, with every intention, your friends, when they're telling you out on the golf course all these things, they're doing it to help, but ultimately they're not professional coaches. And one of the things that I do hear being said quite a bit, I'm just going to clip this one in here, is don't go for a lesson. You might mess up your game. It's not going to be the case. You might go for a lesson and you might not gel with that PGA professional that you go for, but do go and get golf lessons. All it requires is getting some good information and then you putting in a little bit of hard work. It's not going to be an instant fix overnight. If it was that easy, we'd all be out playing on the professional tours. If you can select a good PGA pro, get some good information, commit yourself to doing a little bit of practice, you'll then know how your golf swing works, how to fix it when it's going wrong on the golf course, and ultimately that should lead to you playing better golf. So my final piece of advice is lessons do work. Don't listen to anyone who is saying don't go and get a lesson. Even if it's only one lesson to understand how your golf swing works, go and take one, find out about your game and start improving from there. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this lesson and I hope it's dispelled a few myths for you. Remember, always click that subscribe button down in the box below to make sure that you're getting your free golf lessons every week. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in your next lesson.